Good morning. Fix my camera there. Welcome to Crop Hour, Soil Health and Regenerative Ag Week. I think you probably all know me, Anthony Bly, a soils specialist with Extension. Hope you have a cup of coffee this morning. Can enjoy this time with us. This morning we have three producers from South Dakota who are really into diversification on their farms. And what I want to do is have them talk a little bit about their farm. I have a PowerPoint we're going to load up and have some slides. And then when that's all done, I hope that you have a lot of questions. Please use the Q&A down at the bottom or the chat. And I will get those questions to our group today. So first I'd like to introduce our producers, Brian Johnson from Frankfurt. Brian and his wife, Jamie, have a diversified farm there that Brian will talk about. And then David Kruger from Twin Brooks, also a great diversification going on there on his farm. And then Kurt Stiefvater from Salem. And again, same story with all three of these producers. And so hopefully you'll see something that sparks your interest and you'll have a question or two to ask. So I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this works. Okay, did that work? And now I'm going to convert to presentation mode. How's that? Everybody see that?
Looks good.
Okay. So Brian, you're up first.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. What a beautiful day to be doing this versus outside in the snow. So I farm up in Spink County in the James River watershed with my wife and 4 kids and my parents on our farm that was started back in 1906. And so we've been here a while. We've got a mixture of cropland and grassland acres. We run a cow-calf operation on our grass acres as well as on some of our cover crop acres. And so we got a variety of things going on, and I'm busy chasing kids a lot of times, but they also are great help on the operation as they're getting older here now. So we'll get started here. Next slide. So on our operation, we grow a variety of crops, spring wheat, winter wheat, oats and barley, depending on my forage needs in the spring, as well as corn and soybeans and alfalfa. Almost all our small grains are always followed by cover crops. And we've been no-till since 1986. And so the main part of the reason we went that way back in the day was my dad was tired of the crops drying out in the summer. And so it came down to moisture retention. And over time, we've changed our rotation on some fields. And, obviously there's years where spring small grains are very difficult to get in, but the fall seeded winter wheat, as well as the rye cover crops that we've been using lately have given us a lot of flexibility in the spring in those years where we have excess moisture as well. So a lot of things going on. The diversity not only helps us with spreading out our risk as far as grain production, but it definitely helps with our weed control and weed suppression. And with the incorporation of cover crops there, we've been able to really control our weed bank, and it really helps us on the dollar and cents side of things too. So it gives a lot of flexibility on that end. So next slide. One of the things we did about 12 years ago, it's been longer than that now, was enroll a bunch of our acres that had salinity issues into a grass program, and we utilized mostly CRP at the time. If you're not familiar with the James River watershed, that is a likelihood of salinity issues over the last 20 years there, and we were not immune to that. And so it just basically comes down to the characteristics of the soils in this region. And so, and as well as the moisture, not only the moisture retention, but the ability to use the moisture with crops or grass. And so the salts rise to the top in those areas that you have problems with. And so we decided to take a lot of those acres out of production for crops and put them back into grass. And so it really not only increased our APH and our profitability on our acres, but it provided great hunting habitat, fixed a lot of the salinity issues. And in the end, it comes down to dollars and cents, especially in this year when you're looking at possibly record high input costs to produce corn or beans on those acres. If you are, and if you know, based on your history and your yield maps, that you're not going to break even there, why would you keep doing that? And that a lot of that goes back to a program that Anthony's familiar with the Every Acre Counts, is knowing your break even on every acre. And so we made the decision to get those back to grass. Many of them are still in that CRP program. There are some of our areas on our farm that we did not re-enroll and are instead managing them ourselves, whether that is to cut the hay once every 2 years, or they are grazed by our cattle when we are grazing the adjoining crop residue or cover crops in the fall. So it comes down to knowing your profitability on an acre basis and managing it so that you are as profitable as you can be, but doing the best you can for the soil as well. So next slide. This is an example of one of those areas in our part of the world. This is, as I was driving down the road one day, I snapped a few pictures. This is one of those saline areas in our township that you can see. There's nothing growing there. So you're spreading money with fertilizer and chemical and seed there, but you have essentially a $0 return. And so if you look at the next slide, that's a picture of one of our areas that we put into that grass CRP program. I don't have any inputs there. It's a great wildlife habitat. Our hunters love that area. It's small enough that they can walk it. Wildlife protection, but it's also providing a return on investment for us because we're getting paid to leave it in grass. So however you decide, whatever grass program you want to do there, or just manage it yourself like we are on some of our acres, that picture there with where you actually have plants growing is obviously much more conducive to your soil health and your profitability than an area that doesn't have anything growing. Next slide. One of the bigger changes we made in our operation a few years ago is we started incorporating rye as a cover crop into standing corn. And this photo is from October of 21. So if you remember back in the fall of 21, there was in our part of the world, there was a fair amount of moisture that fall. And so I decided, this was end of August is when we applied. We flew on with an airplane our rye into standing corn. And then we received a lot of rain that fall. I think we were like 10 inches by November. And we had a really good stand of rye. You can see there in the corn that had yet to be cut, and then the picture next to it of the corn that was already harvested. It was a pretty good stand. It was thick, lush, really helped with our corn harvest because of the amount of water we had. The rain really soaked in well, and we knew we were set up good for the next spring. Next slide. So this would have been May of last spring. We had about 65% of our acres on our farm that last year were green in the spring, when you figure in our winter wheat, our rye, and our alfalfa. And almost all of our bean fields, except for maybe 10%, were had rye on growing in them. And so you go back to our years of when Dad switched back in '86 to no-till. His goal was for moisture retention. Was his reasoning. Well, having that many acres green, his instinct was, how much water is this rye using? Well, we had another 8 to 10 inches of rain in the spring, and so there was plenty of moisture there. So we let the rye grow, and it was one of the best seeding conditions that I've ever planted beans into in my life. It was, the soil was so mellow and was protected from erosion that we had last spring. You saw a lot of wind erosion, and we didn't have that. And one of the reasons that I was comfortable doing this was I knew we had been doing it for several years. We'd started small and we'd scaled up, but also I was using it as a weed management program, because going into last year, if people remember, there was some supply issues with herbicides, and I knew that I would have great broadleaf control in the spring planting beans into rye, and it worked out great. We ended up just using, we did some residuals yet, just because I was using Roundup as my post. So I wanted to have a little bit extra help with the residual side of the program. My plan going forward is, if I ever get a situation again where we've got great rye growth in the spring, is to back off on the residuals and just use post app most likely in the summer there in July. So, but every year is different. So this really worked out well. We had great bean yields. We didn't have any yield drag in those areas, and so it's a success for us, and we plan on using it going forward. Next slide. So this is a photo in one of those fields of 3 weeks after planting. We terminated the rye within a week of planting. Depending on the field, it was anywhere from 12, 18 inches tall up to 2.5 feet tall by the time we got done with beans. So varying stages of rye growth there, but it all just kind of decayed onto itself. And you can see the little bean rows in between the corn stalks, and we're in 20-inch rows for corn and beans. So there's a lot of residue there, but if you look closely, those beans are all coming through. We had a great stand. I didn't see any issues with germination there. If you've got the right planter set up with your row cleaners and get the right seed depth, if you manage the residue and get good seed soil contact and good closing wheels, you'll have a success doing it, because we've been able to do it, and I firmly believe in it. My dad is now as well believing in it. He was impressed. So next slide. And this is a photo of what it can look like. This was in one picture I took in our county last spring. If you don't have residue or cover crops on your field to actually hold the soil in place. And unfortunately, we saw this 90 years ago, and we still see it today. And so it comes down to trying to improve how we manage the erosion risk in our part of the world, whether it's wind or rain. I believe we can all do better. Nobody's perfect. We all have incidents where we can't control what Mother Nature gives us, but if we put all of our tools in the toolbox that are available to us, if we use those and do our best to manage the risk that we have, hopefully we don't see pictures like this near as much in the future. Next slide. So that's kind of a brief summary of what we've done. I think it's better if people have questions to rather than sit and listen to me talk, fire away. But so Anthony, if you want to do questions now or after the other speakers go, that's fine.
Let's just keep going, and we'll when everybody's done, we'll open it up for questions. David, you'd be next.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm David Kruger. I live in the northeast corner of South Dakota, about 10 miles west of Melbank. I'm on the eastern edge of the Coteau Hills. You can go to the next slide, Anthony. I started no-tilling in 1993. A little history. I started working for a neighbor in 1985 who, when I was 17 years old, he told me that he was going to retire when he was 50 and that I could take over his operation. And so that would be in 2000 was when he would turn 50. So I continued to work for him, and I started to farm a little bit of my grandpa's land that he owned when he had retired. I kind of started doing that. Well, I had a little bit in when I was in high school, but when I got out of Lake Area Votech in 1991 is when I started farming a little bit more of his ground, trading labor for equipment use. In 1993, I was introduced to no-till by Jim Clendenin in Lake Area, and so in 1993 I started renting a no-till drill, and we made a few changes to the corn planter that I was renting from my neighbor to be able to start no-tilling corn. We started in a real small scale, starting with a 29-acre field first, and increasing. Like by year 2000, I was farming about 450 acres on my own, and then in 2000 I took over the neighbor's farm. This picture we have in front of you is a picture of the some of the farm, the area that I farm right now. I've got some other fields farther away, but I have these 11 quarters that all touch each other. 7 of these quarters are land that has been no-tilled as long as I've farmed them. They've been no-tilled anywhere from 1993 to 2003, I guess would be when I got the last one. The interesting thing of this is the guy I worked for was not in favor of the no-till, and when I was doing it on mine, he was always watching the yields, and you're not getting quite as good a yield. The corn yields were averaging 3 bushel less, bean yields are about the same, and I was having wheat and he wasn't. And so when he quit in 2000, I started no-tilling his land too for a couple of years, and he said, no, you're not going to do that on mine. I want you to keep tilling it. So 4 of these 11 quarters, I continued to do light tillage on up until last year. And the other 7 quarters have been no-till, continuous no-till with wheat in the rotation. His 4 quarters were corn bean rotation because he felt that he could make more money, get higher rent with a corn bean rotation. And in my 7 quarters, I wanted to keep wheat in the rotation. And my reasoning for wanting to keep wheat in the rotation was I felt it was beneficial to the soil health, and that I felt that I was seeing better corn yields at that point because of it. Go to the next slide, Anthony. So my rotation on those 4 quarters was a corn bean rotation, and on the other 7 quarters was a corn bean wheat rotation. There was an occasional time where I wasn't able to get wheat in a field to keep a pure corn bean wheat rotation. So there was a few variations over the years on certain fields, but we tried to stay with that rotation. And so I'm gonna basically focus what I talk on here is the comparisons that I've seen on the 4 quarters that were corn bean rotation with tillage compared to my fields that have the wheat in the rotation. Every year since the last 15 years at least, I get 2 or 3 people every year that says, so are you going to plant wheat again? I especially remember 2013, 14 when corn went high, and now the last couple of years again too. Are you going to plant wheat again? Yep, I'm going to plant wheat again. Well, why are you going to plant wheat? You can't make any money with it. I says, well, yeah, we can't make money with wheat, but I'm still making money having wheat in the rotation. And here's the reasons why. I'm seeing a 15 bushel yield advantage in where I have wheat in the rotation over the corn and bean rotation. And I'm taking these numbers off of crop insurance, and we also just see it, on the combine. When we hit the fields where the wheat stubble is, we're seeing a bigger 15, about a 15. We've seen from 10 to 30 over the years. That's usually the average, is between 10 to 30, but over a 10-year average, we're seeing a 15 bushel average. Bean yields are averaging 3 bushel an acre better. We are seeing a decreased chemical cost and weed resistance where we have wheat in the rotation. The main decrease in cost is in pre-emergence. On the fields that I have wheat in the rotation, we have not used a pre-emergence herbicide since Eradicane and Extrazine, which we quit using in the late 80s or early 90s. On the fields that we have a corn bean rotation, we always need some kind of a residual herbicide to control the water hemp. So that's been a tremendous savings over the years. We still spray all of our bean fields 3 times. We spray a Roundup 240 burn down in the spring, followed by usually the same chemicals we put in our bean fields later on. Cornfields, we usually get by with 2 passes. We do a Roundup 240 burn down just before it comes up, and then we follow with the same, basically the same chemicals that we do in the corn bean rotation. Another advantage is we don't need any triple stack corn where we have wheat in the rotation, because we are spreading out that rotation. We don't have the rootworm pressure. Spreads out my workload. I don't have I don't have a lot of help. It's basically me, and I usually have somebody that'll help during harvest and planting. So I'm doing most of it myself. So having wheat in the rotation definitely helps spread out some of the work. And we've seen a reduced nitrogen needs in corn. I don't necessarily believe that's because of the wheat in the rotation, but I think that's a result of the long-term no-till. We are reducing our N rates, like for this coming year, 40 to 50 pounds per acre in the cornfields where we've been long-term no-till. And for the last 6 years, we've been doing this, and we make a pass in every field where we go a higher rate to compare to see if we get a yield increase from more nitrogen. And on the tilled fields, we are not able to cut back on that amount. We see an increase by adding extra N. Actually on the corn bean rotation, we haven't reduced the fertilizer. We make a pass or two where we reduce it and go the full rate, the normal SDSU recommendations on those fields, because we're seeing a yield decrease when we don't put on the extra N. But on the corn bean wheat rotations, we're reducing the entire field and making a pass or two in every field to put another 30 to 50 pounds on to see if we see a yield response. And we will see maybe up to a 2 bushel. You know, it's getting fine enough where you can hardly tell a difference, but we have seen up to maybe a 2 bushel yield decrease by decreasing it that 50 pounds, but it's not covering the cost of the fertilizer. And one of the big things that I think helps me is the cooler soil temps in July and August in my wheat stubble fields. Everybody's concerned about the soil being too cold in the spring. We haven't seen much trouble. We pick varieties of corn that do well germinating in colder soils. But I think that keeping the ground cooler in July and August makes a big difference as far as the amount of nutrients that are released in July and August, because your ground is cooler, a little more moisture there, and the microbes in the soil are just like you and me. They'd rather work in 96-degree temperatures instead of 120-degree temperatures. One other thing that I have on here that's kind of an interesting side note. So the neighbor, the guy that I work for that doesn't want me to no-till and didn't want me to plant wheat on his ground, 2 years ago, he came to me and said, I've been watching you and I think you better start putting wheat on my ground. He says, our salts are getting worse all the time on our ground here ever since we quit planting wheat. And where you've got wheat in your rotation, you seem to be managing the salts better. And I noticed that too. Our salty areas where we have wheat in the rotation and the no-till have definitely, not that they're not there, but we are definitely maintaining them better. They're not getting bigger. Where on his fields, they were getting a little bigger all the time. And the exciting part last year, or just this last fall, he said to me, he said, well, I know the only reason you're tilling my ground is because I won't let you, but you can go ahead and start doing it now because it looks like you got it working pretty good. So now he's given me the okay after 20 years to start no-tilling his also. So let's go to the next slide, Anthony. So these are actual numbers off my APH crop insurance yields from the last 10 years. And so I put this in here to show you why I feel I'm making more money with wheat in the rotation. And I use the prices that are on there are the new crop grain prices as of, I think it was February 5th. I just went and I took the new crop price of corn, beans, and wheat on, it was February 4th or 5th, and plugged them in there as the price of grain. And each field, I keep track of my cost of production per field. So I use two fields that are side by side each other for this comparison. And I used a 6-year comparison. So in the top section there where it says a corn and bean rotation, it's 6 years. So it's 3 years of corn, 3 years of soybeans. And we don't need to get into all the numbers, but you'll see the gross 6-year income. My gross 6-year income is $201.87. That's after all living expenses, and I've got a machinery expense and everything in there. So then if you go down to the bottom half where I have corn, bean, and wheat rotation, there's 2 years of corn, 2 years of beans, 2 years of wheat in a 6-year period there. And as you see, I'm making, like in corn, my total income per year is $501. Beans for this coming year at $13 beans, we're only going to make about $6, which kind of hard to believe. $13 beans, and we're not going to make a whole lot of money. But the interesting thing is on wheat, I'm going to lose $230 an acre. But if you put that into the 6-year program, my increased corn yield, my increased bean yield, and my decreased costs, I'm still going to make $276 an acre gross over the 6 years compared to the 201 in the corn bean rotation. Now I realize this is kind of a busy slide probably to sit and look at and figure out and see if you agree with my numbers. To the best of my ability, it's I feel it's accurate that I'm comparing, trying to do a fair comparison. And I feel that wheat in the rotation has definitely helped me out long-term profitability. You know, it's kind of interesting over the years. There's years that we have that corn does really well, and there's years that wheat does really well. It's very seldom that we'll have a bumper crop in wheat and a bumper crop in corn and beans. So even on a year when wheat maybe doesn't do quite as good, those years the corn and beans will do better. But then there's been a few years where really weren't corn years. It got a little dry later on, and we'll have phenomenal wheat yields. And so there's times where I've made, you know, I would say 50% of the time I probably just break even with wheat, and a few times I'll lose money with wheat. But there's been 50% of the times where I actually make money with wheat also. And so on a long-term basis, I believe this $70 an acre is a very conservative number. I could show probably one of these 2 years where I would actually make money instead of losing money on wheat. So that's basically what I had planned for presentation. If you have questions or anything, you can certainly feel free to ask at the end.
Thank you, David. And so our next presenter is Kurt Stiefvater from Salem. Take it away, Kurt.
Morning, everybody. I'm Kurt Stiefvater. I farm northeast of Salem with my wife and 3 daughters. We try and get all the work done around here, but I got a diversified operation of corn, soybeans, oats, and winter wheat. I also got a cow-calf operation that I incorporate to make it a good diversified operation. I've done no-till for about 30 years. Wanted to save that moisture and just figure out a better way to keep that cover. I didn't know about the 5 principles of soil health quite then, but wanted to get the soil protected more and figure out how to save that moisture. Also, I'm on 22-inch row spacings for my corn. We just really like that to get that quicker canopy for weed control and for saving that moisture, protecting that ground. I didn't know what I was doing the first 10 years of no-tilling. We weren't 100% no-till, but we are now. Just didn't understand the soil properties well enough and how it functions, getting that soil biology working for that. And that's what I was trying to shoot for, kind of what this picture looks like. That's what I wanted to get to. Didn't know all about it at first, but just really wanted to improve the soil, change our cropping rotation. We started that in 2011. Implemented oats into the rotation. Started raising seed oats as another way to capture some more dollars in there, improve the return for those acres. Just really wanted that. And then with having the livestock in there, the oats didn't really work out to take them to full harvest. I could use it as a calf feed or cattle winter feed that way. The cattle, that's pushing 30 years now too. I switched my calving date till middle of May. We always did about the 1st of April or so, get done before you go harvest or before you go planting spring work. And we moved it to the middle of May, and that has just worked outstanding. Just really like that operation. Let them go calve on their own. I don't babysit them hardly at all. I'll check them and tag the calves in the morning, and we move on with our day. So aren't fighting that elements of weather mostly. Minimal feed expense that way. So moving that and looking at this whole picture, even for the crops and the livestock, just doing some reading and understanding why don't we work with Mother Nature more. It's like the natural prairie had a lot of diversity for their ecosystem there. And over time, when we started farming the land and stuff, we actually kind of changed it, but Mother Nature had it right. And same way with the cow-calf going to May. Why I picked that is when does a lot of the wildlife have their young. So that's part of why I switched over to that time frame. Mother Nature, we just as well work with her rather than against her. A lot of it was to reduce inputs, changing my operation. Labor is always a challenge, and going no-till, reducing that tillage work, saving the input costs there. That's helped tremendously over time here. Just don't have a lot of extra capital expense of having machinery or just operation and upkeep on that equipment. Moving on, just trying to saw this photo from the extension and SDSU research here from a couple years ago. This really captured my eye in hearing how much soil has changed in there. What they did here was take a x-ray of 3 different soil samples. They took a core sample and then x-rayed it. And the green part that you're looking at is actually the pore space that are left for air and water in there. So the more green is how much more pore space is in that soil sample. And going back to what Mother Nature did there in that native grass, there's a lot of pore space to hold water and for roots and oxygen, microorganisms to get their oxygen and water and move about the soil. Your roots can move. Just a lot of advantages there that I just was impressed and could visualize what's in your soil or what it looks like, the pore space in there. So that's just one area to capture. I know it's out there in pamphlets and probably on the internet somewhere, but I was just impressed with this slide. We can go to the next one, Anthony. This is the soil pit we dug on my farm here a few years ago, and kind of capturing the same thing. Kind of curious how we just went in to a standing cornfield and dug a soil pit, looking at the roots, how far they get down. That's about 3.5 feet is about how deep that is. And as you can see, we're getting some of the carbon to penetrate and the organic matter into that clay layer in there. It's probably about 8 inches of darker topsoil and about 3 inches of the lighter brown, and then the clay kicks in. Just was kind of impressed, a good visual too. The roots can still penetrate down in through that. And as it's opening up pore space for worm diversity and microorganisms and everything, capture rainfall and just make a lot better topsoil and increase the resiliency in our soils. That's one thing I've really seen over the years, is between drought and being able to capture and hold that rainfall, building that organic matter and having that pore space in my soil to really help the plants and the microorganisms to survive, keep going, improve my plants. I've just been impressed. Neighbors have even commented too that how come your corn's staying green longer in these droughter years? So I just not just my perspective, I guess, of looking at it. We can go to the next one too, Anthony. Part of using my livestock and working with not just the crop ground is out in my pastures. So I started using rotational grazing about 8 years ago. And this is just showing how I divided up about a 30-acre pasture. I did install a water tank in the middle of the pasture and divided it just by electric fence into 3 paddocks. And I'll put about 17, 18 pairs in there in the spring. And I can, except for this last year, it ran a little short with the drought, but usually I can get them all the way through from about the 1st of June till mid-October on just these 30 acres, just by using rotation in there. And I may, when it starts out, it's a little longer, I'll maybe hold them in a paddock for 10 days and keep rotating them around. And as the summer goes along and a little drier or something, I might move them every once a week, every 5 to 6 days. But it's really stretched out my pastures. I've noticed better weed control. It's helped a lot, and the cattle just seem more satisfied. Haven't noticed any reduction in weight gains for the calves. It's probably actually improved because I think the cows milk a little better, the fresher grass, and the calves go eat that tender grass that regrows as part of the rotation. And they're just more willing to eat it rather than a dry grass. Just more beneficial to the crop or to the pasture ground overall too. They're spreading the fertilizer or manure around for a fertilizer. more evenly distributed. And sometimes when you just have a big open pasture, they'll just go stand in one area, or they'll just graze one area heavier. So this helps kind of move them around. So it's distributed, grazed, and manure is distributed evenly throughout the acres. Just a lot of, finish up a little bit. I just like the way my soil's been improving over the years and can handle that resiliency. I like the diversification because it gives me a lot of options. My different marketing, like it was said earlier too, I like to spread out the workload throughout the year. This picture here is just I put cover crops in after my small grains for my winter feed for my cows. That's majority. I put up some hay. I do have alfalfa too. I do put up some hay storage for the winter, but majority of my feed source is grazing my cover crops throughout the winter. This year wound up being the exception when we got 30 inches of snow sitting out in the fields and it's all covered up. But they just go out and graze, do so much better. The cattle get exercise. I don't have to haul manure the next year because they're in a penned area or anything. They're out distributing that part. I like that hoof action even in the spring when it works a little bit. It's not really a tillage, but they are poking the residue into the ground a little bit. I pull them off before it gets really thawed out and making deep roots or anything or deep footprints. So you do get a little action there to incorporate some different residues and stuff from on top. I guess that's about all I have.